So hello and welcome to the Lewis Nichols Show, and I'm really excited to bring on my next guest, who looks like he's in space, but he's not. It's just a really cool background. And let's say hello to Sam Humphrey. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on your show. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm really chuffed to get you on, mainly because my favourite film of all time, just like a lot of British people, is of course The Greatest Showman, which we'll get on to a little bit later. But I wanted to kind of talk about, for you, was being an actor something you always wanted to do? Like when you were little, did you always know that I wanted to be an actor?
Yeah, so when I was little, growing up, when I was about 8 years old, was the kind of the sparking moment where I decided I wanted to be an actor. And I tell the story like hundreds of times because everyone always wants to know. So why did you become an actor? And so I saw Hugh Jackman on the big screen for the very first time. Well, not necessarily the first time, but I saw him when I was about 8 years old on the big screen, being Wolverine. And as any 8-year-old boy or whatever decides to run around the house pretending to be Wolverine, and I was no exception. So I strapped on these fake claws I made out of cardboard, and here I am running around my house just like like pretending to stab people. So, and that was like kind of my whole inspiration into getting into acting, because I wanted to do the same thing as what Hugh Jackman did, or technically I wanted to be Wolverine, but that's a fictional character. So,
please tell me you've told Hugh this story.
I've told him, and he loves it.
That's incredible.
He loves it.
I mean, obviously, I've seen on some of your interviews before, you've been very open and honest about, growing up, the problems that you've had health-wise as well.
Yeah.
And I know that you were born with, is it skeletal dysplasia? Have I said that correctly?
Yeah. Yeah. So I was actually born with a condition called acrodysplasia. Now, what skeletal dysplasia is kind of like an umbrella term. So there's a lot of different sort of variations of like the mutation. Now, mine is very specific to like myself, and like there'll be other people in the world that may have the same thing as me, but it varies slightly from condition to condition. But yeah, so that's.
I mean, what was that like? Because I imagine, as a child, a lot of your time would have been going to hospital, seeing doctors, and that kind of stuff. What was that like to deal with? Because when we see you in interviews and on television, you always come across as such a happy, fun guy. But I guess it's not always been like that for you. It must have been difficult at times.
Yeah. And I mean, to just kind of going into that, like being a positive person and all that, I think that comes a lot from like my upbringing, my childhood, and dealing with all of these, negative things and all of my medical, conditions and all that I've grown up with. Because growing up with such a, I guess, negative past, or, I wouldn't say unhappy childhood, but not such a great childhood. Like being who I am today, like it makes me focus on the positivity of my life. It makes me focus on what I'm thankful for. And one of the quotes that I live by, like every day, like people ask me, what are some of the quotes that you live by? And one of them is, have extreme gratitude every single day. And that's super important, because like like you said, like I've almost died like 5 times. Like, I mean, I shouldn't be here. Doctors have said, like, when I was born, doctors said to my parents, and they said to me growing up, that I may not make it past my 18th birthday. And then even so, the quality of my life was very uncertain. Like they said that I might spend my entire life going in and out of hospital and just, you know, going back and forth to doctors, and that would be my life. But, you know, I've chosen not to focus on that, and I've chosen to use my platform and what I can do and what I choose to focus on to, you know, be positive and be fun and cool and all of that you mentioned.
I mean, that must have been to be told though that, you know, you won't reach a certain age, and to have so much, that must have kind of been a massive thing to take. But the fact you've turned that around and you've kind of not let it dictate your life, you've actually moved forward. Have you been in a stage where you've been able to, especially now, you know, being so well known, help other people who are going through the same thing? Have you had a chance to kind of show people that, look, just because the doctor says that's going to happen, it doesn't mean it will happen. Look at me,
Yeah.
I'm a living example. Have you had a chance to help other people with that?
Yeah. I mean, it's been honestly, obviously before Greatest Showman, like I still obviously went through all this, but before Greatest Showman, no one necessarily knew who I was or knew my story. And that's why I'm really, really thankful to Greatest Showman. Even if I never did another project in my life, which is definitely not the case. I actually have some things that I'm working on currently. But even if I never did anything else in my life like that, Greatest Showman has given me the platform and the exposure to be able to share my life and my story with, you know, the millions of other people out there that are struggling, just like I was, and or even worse than I was. And obviously, you know, I'm not saying that my life is all, you know, sunshine and rainbows today, because it's definitely not. I still struggle with like Crohn's disease, so I have Crohn's disease myself. So that's, you know, I don't always have great days with that. And then I still struggle with, as much as I'd like to say I've gotten past most of it, I still struggle with, you know, self-esteem myself and mental health problems, where I feel like, you know, there are a lot of days where I feel like I don't measure up, or I'm not, you know, worth all this attention and all of that. So there's definitely still those days. And that's where, like, going to sort of what I'm doing now, I'm starting to build a self-empowerment and youth diversity brand, it's in the very early stages, but I'm starting on that now. And so it's a brand, and it's a kind of a lifestyle that I want to be, a self-empowerment brand for the youth and for people who don't have that belief in themselves and don't believe in, you know, the diversity of different cultures, that they can do whatever they set their mind to. And you might see my cat as well, because she's also just walking around about me. So she's a big part of who I am. So
It just looks like you've got a cat in space because of the background, so it's pretty
true. That's probably not good.
I mean, you know what I love? I follow you on social media. I've got you on Instagram.
Oh, thank you.
You really do reach out to people, and you help people. And so much when you've got spare time, you put a message out there and you just interact and you let people ask you questions. And one thing I love is you never hold back. You're honest and you say it as it is. And I think at the moment, especially with men, in regards to mental health and dealing with anxiety, it used to be a thing where people couldn't talk about it, or they felt that they
couldn't. Yeah, for sure.
And it seems like we're going in a good direction now, where I think there is some more support becoming available. Men are feeling able to talk. I mean, what advice would you give people that are struggling with, for instance, like the lockdowns and, you know, everything that's going on at the moment? What advice would you give those?
Well, so specifically for the lockdown, and I mean, even like with going into like the topic of like men trying to, you know, express themselves and being able to express themselves emotionally, I think that it's important to take time for yourself, and especially I think for guys. Look, there's a stigma around the fact that guys can't be open and can't share their feelings and can't, you know, you have to hold it all in, and we have to be, you know, men. Like, I think there's a terrible stigma around that. Like, yes, 50 years ago, you know, the stigma was that men had to be, you know, these bulky guys and had to, you know, keep all their emotions in and had to, you know, hold everything together. But I think we're definitely coming a long way in the fact that with all the diversity stuff and the BLM movement and the, you know, the gender equality and all that kind of stuff, I think we're seeing a shift in men being able to express themselves more and feel more comfortable in doing so. And now we're seeing that there's definitely different types of men, so to speak. You know, there's not necessarily that masculine, you know, stereotypical man these days.
Yeah.
You can have the emotional man, you can have the masculine man, you can have, you know, there are different types. That's what I'm saying. I get in my head sometimes and I ramble.
Well, I did wonder, before we go on to obviously your time in The Greatest Showman, I mean, was that your first experience in regards to television or film, or had you done work prior? I mean, when did your first television opportunity come about?
Right. So Greatest Showman was my first like major feature film. So I guess even though I've done like smaller stuff, I would say that The Greatest Showman was like my break in acting.
Yeah.
Like that was the first thing where, like, on an international scale, that I was known. Now in Australia and like in the UK, many of you guys probably saw me on Neighbours. So yeah. So I did a few episodes of Neighbours, and this is actually kind of funny. Because in Australia, Neighbours is kind of the launching pad for, you know, international celebrities that, you know, come out to Hollywood. And in my mind, I was kind of like, oh, okay, cool. I landed Neighbours. I'll be on Neighbours for, you know, a couple seasons, and, you know, maybe I'll make the jump to Hollywood. I did 3 episodes of Neighbours, and then I got picked up on Greatest Showman. So
Wow.
it
is true.
I kind of followed that, you know, the pathway of launching on Neighbours and then jumping to Hollywood shortly after. So it was kind of funny. Yeah.
So, I mean, how did your part in The Greatest Showman actually come about? I mean, did you go to an audition? Is that how it kind of worked for you?
Yes. So obviously the whole thing was done over in the US here, and I was in Australia. So a agent that I had in the UK, which I actually didn't know I had, because I'd signed up to them like a couple years earlier, and I like forgot all about them, you know, just going about my life. Then I got a random email that just said 20th Century Fox working on, and at the time it was called The Greatest Show on Earth. So I was kind of like, well, this sounds really weird. I'm like, the name doesn't even really flow that well. But I was like, okay, whatever. So I was like, I don't think this is for me. And I was actually about to delete it. So literally my finger on the delete, about to hit the delete button. And I was like, this is a hoax, because like, why would 20th Century Fox come to me? Like, you know, I'm this little person in Australia and in my suburb, very small suburb. So like, you wouldn't think that in my suburb I would get the chance to do something this huge. So I got the audition and I did the self-tape. I had 48 hours to do the self-tape. I rang out my best friend and I was like, dude, I need your help. I need a self-tape this, and I need to send it back to my agent. He was like, okay, let's do it. So I went to his house, self-tape. And then I sent it in, and I was like, probably not going to hear back from them. You know, it's like any audition, you send it in and you usually never hear back. But about a week later, to my surprise, my agent's like, you got shortlisted. I'm like, wait, what? I got shortlisted? Okay, whatever. I'm like, cool. Never made it past this point before, so that's cool. And then literally the next week, she goes, so the director wants to have a Skype chat with you now, and actually wants you to run the audition with him on a Skype chat. And I'm like, okay, this is big. So Skype chatted with him, did my audition with him. You know, we ran through some things, we changed some things. he was like, yeah, this is cool. I really like you and you're cool. And so he was like, yeah, we really wanna cast you, but we have to deal with some other things first. So we have to deal with your visa and we need to meet with you in Vancouver to set up the visa if you're on board. And I'm like, my eyes just, went wide. I'm like, yeah, I'm on board totally. And so next thing I know, I'm basically cast, right? And then they say, okay, we'll have you flown out to Vancouver to meet with me, because we need to technically have you working with us before we can like cast you. So I basically flew out to Vancouver for 1 day. I was in Vancouver for 1 day. I flew 30 hours for a 1-hour meeting with our director in Vancouver. And then I flew home the next day. So that was like 30 hours of flying for a 1-hour meeting. It was crazy. But, I got cast and yeah.
I mean, when you read the script for the very first time, and you learned about the character that you were going to be playing of Charles, what was your initial reaction? So when you read it, were you kind of like, this is amazing, or did you kind of think, I can't see how this is going to work? What were your whole initial reaction?
Well, my first thing was, I was like, oh, this is kind of an interesting story. It's like, about the circus and, Charles Stratton. It's a little bit, I didn't necessarily like realize that at the time because like, there was so much going on in my head at the time, like big movie and they wanted me and like, so my head was just so like, focused. But then going down the line, I started realizing that this character is actually very close to myself in a lot of ways. Now, obviously, I wasn't hidden away from the world necessarily, like by my parents or my mom or anything like that. But at the same time, I kind of hid myself away from the world, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I hid who I truly was. Like, I mean, I don't know if you've heard any of my story, but so dealing with a lot of my mental health and like a lot of going to specialists, to doctors' offices and going in and out of the hospital and stuff, I hid away who I really was. Like I put on smiles and I laughed with my friends and all that, but honestly deep down inside I was a very unhappy kid. I was very depressed, and I attempted suicide on many occasions. Like I attempted suicide probably 5 or 6 times. I had a very dark teenage time, even though a lot of other people never saw that. And I talk about that now because it's very important to show that was really who I was growing up. Like, because a lot of not even just teenagers, but a lot of people are struggling with that. And, they don't have the realness, or they don't feel comfortable or open enough to tell people that's what they're struggling with, or that they are struggling with that. And I'm still struggling with that. Obviously, I never feel like I want to take my own life anymore because, that's, I've got a lot going for me. But I still struggle with mental illness and, feeling like, am I worth enough and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like it's very important to talk about it and get it out in the open and show that if us as, quote unquote celebrities are dealing with this and struggling with self-doubt and mental health and not feeling like we're worthy, then it is completely okay for everyone to feel like that. And I know, and I watched interviews of Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, who says most days he struggles with, feeling like he's enough. And he's Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Yeah.
He's like the most well-known actor and the most like, the most amazing person like on earth.
Yeah.
And so if he struggles with it, then, and he's open about it, then it's completely okay for all of us to struggle with that and be okay with feeling not okay.
Sam, I think honestly, I do think that's amazing that you are so open and honest, and that's what I meant with your social media, because it does really help other people. And like you said, when well-known people, celebrities, are so expressive and are willing to share it with people, I think that helps other people kind of going forward. And like, you know, just hearing you there saying about with the character that you were playing of Charles, there is similarities in the sense where you were saying that he was kind of hidden away, but you were hiding your true self away. So did you have to do a lot of research into this character? Like, did you, you know, when you got the part, did you go home and kind of really look into him? Did you want to do the character justice as such?
I think, because I mean, I got the character, and obviously there was so much going on in my head. I think once I got to New York and I was kind of in the atmosphere and on set, like I started to look up kind of Charles Stratton's life and a little bit of what he had gone through. And so, I mean, I didn't do too much research because, like, I feel like my own life, like, I could understand what he was feeling and what he was going through, or what he went through, and the life he lived, because that's kind of what I went through. Like, you know, I'm actually not his height, like I'm 4'2", but I still struggled with, you know, being short, and I struggled with, you know, for example, himself, he married, I can't remember her name, but he married like another short person as well. And, you know, so he found people that were able to support him and, you know, champion him on. And I think in the same way that the Greatest Showman, Charles Stratton, found people around him to champion him on and, you know, support his own life and who he was, it's the same thing that I'm doing and that we all need to do. Because, you know, we need to find people that are going to support us in what we're doing and can encourage us and give us the self-empowerment that we need. And that's what I'm doing with, you know, starting my brand and my company and everything that I do. I try to, I really try to inspire and encourage people, because for me, I'm a huge part of what's called the rare community. And what that is basically people who are, you know, have been diagnosed with rare diseases, like myself. And you probably won't know too much about it, but you probably seen from my social media, a non-profit organization that I support, that I will be becoming a global ambassador for as well, called Global Genes. Now, they're an organization that worldwide, they support people and organizations that are helping to raise awareness, fundraise, and support, you know, people and organizations that are trying to find causes and treatments for rare diseases. And that's super important because worldwide, there are over 400 million people suffering with rare diseases. That's higher than the US population. Wow. And that number is growing. And so we are trying to, you know, lower that number by finding, you know, advancing medical technology and finding cures and treatments to help these people. And also going forward, I'm also releasing an autobiography next year about my life and the challenges to show, which is another way to show people that I've risen above, you know, my struggles and challenges, and I've managed to do a lot, and to show that I've done it, and hopefully through reading my autobiography, you'll see that it's not impossible for you to do it as well.
I mean, yeah, you're going to have a lot of fun with writing that, because you're going to, so many memories will come back. But one thing at the beginning of the interview, you were talking about Hugh Jackman and kind of how he was an inspiration in regards to you becoming an actor. So when you found out he was going to be the main actor in this film, and I mean, what was it like meeting him for the first time? Can you remember actually meeting him for the first time?
It's a little embarrassing, I'll be honest. I tried to play it really cool, and And in doing so, it came off really, really uncool and stupid. So I'm in Steiner Studio over in New York, in Manhattan, which is where we were filming. So this was like one of our rehearsal spaces. So I come into the space, I meet our director, Michael Gracie. Well, not for the first time, but in person for the first. Not in person for the first time because I met him in Vancouver, but I met him in the rehearsal space, and he goes, "Hey Sam, have you met Hugh yet?" And I'm like, my eyes go a little bit wide because I'm like, oh my goodness. And like, because I can see him out the corner of my eye, like, you know, standing off in the distance. I'm like, he's really, really tall. So I'm like, no, I haven't met Hugh yet. So he goes, okay, yeah, stay here. Let me just go over and grab him. I'm like, okay. So he's walking over, he's going to grab Hugh. Hugh comes walking over, and as he comes walking over, he's just getting taller and taller and taller because he's a tall guy. I think he's about like 6 foot, something like that. So, getting a lot of pop-ups. So he's a tall guy. And so he comes over and goes, "Hey Sam, how's it going? Nice to meet you." I'm like, so I'm trying to be cool. I'm like, arms crossed. I'm like, "Hey Hugh, how's it going, man?" And he's like, "I'm good." I'm like, "Yeah, this not cool, is it?" He's like, "Nope." I'm like, "Okay." So then we just started talking. I'm like, "How you going?" I'm like, "Great to meet you." And honestly, I'm really like, I don't even know like how to, what do I say to him? Like, because he's been my childhood hero since I was 8 years old. And I never like, okay, well, you know, in my head, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to meet this guy. Like, I'm going to work with him. But then at the same time, like in my wildest imagination, never did I actually think I would really be standing next to him and working with him. So like, so much is just like peeing in my head. I'm like, I was kind of in a little bit of a blank moment, but at the same time, like just awestruck. Um, and yeah, he'll probably tell you, he's like, yeah, could have been a better first introduction, but you know, whatever.
I
It's
mean,
a fun story.
it just looks like you two became really good friends, because I've seen pictures of you together on, and I've seen that he, you know, comments that he's made about you, and it just looked like you got on really well. So from your time, obviously filming, did you become friends at the end of all this?
Yeah. So we became good friends, and because he's been my inspiration since I was 8 years old. I wanted to ask him to be my mentor, and obviously, like I was really really nervous about it. Like I was like, why would he, you know, why would he be my mentor? Why would he give me time of day or whatever? Like, because you know, celebrities are super busy and all that stuff. And so I was like, whatever. What have I got to lose? He's like the sweetest man on earth. Like the worst thing he's gonna say is no, or like, yeah, no. So I was like, I walked up to him. I was like, "Hey Hugh," I was like, "I was just wondering if you would be my mentor. Like I've looked up to you since I was 8 years old. You know, I want to follow like in your footsteps. I would love to have the career that you have and everything." Um, and with his like charity that he has, the Laughing Man, this kind of the same thing that I want to do with my own brand. Like I want to give back and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, would you be my mentor? And you know, I paused after that because I was like, I don't know what he's gonna say. And he's like, yeah, I would love to, you know, be your mentor and coach you. And so I was very fortunate to you know, be able to keep in contact with him, and I'm able to send him emails and messages whenever I feel like I need advice from him, and I do send him emails from time to time. So yeah,
And what I
and
love,
we've built a really cool relationship.
well, what I love about you two in the film is, I mean, because you got such a main part in that film, and you're in
Mm,
so many key moments, but you two have the characters have such a chemistry, especially at the end when Barnum's at the bar and kind of he
mm,
realizes that he's made so many mistakes, he's let himself, you know, run wild, and then it's
mm.
when you walk on the bar. And it's that moment of just the both of you, and it's incredible. So, what was he like to actually work with as an actor? Because that must have just been a dream as well, to see him do what he does best, which is act.
Yeah, really. I mean, to watch him act is it's like, I mean, you could sit there and just watch him act for hours. I mean, he's a legend when it comes to acting. Like, obviously, we all know that. But to be on set with him is like, it's a really a different experience, because I haven't gone to like school, like I haven't gone to like film school or acting school or anything like that. Now I grew up like, you know, doing acting in like high school and all that kind of stuff. But being on set with Hugh and with Zendaya and all of those people, that was my acting school. Like, I was thrown in the deep end beside all of these legendary, phenomenal, talented actors and actresses. And I think that was way better for me than going to acting school, because I was able to learn side by side with Hugh. And he's the best actor to learn your craft from, because he just gives so much, like when he acts. Like, and you need that as an actor. If you're not feeling in the atmosphere, or you're not feeling the emotion, or you're not feeling the character from your co-star or your colleague or whatever, then it's really hard for you to feel it as well. And that's what I love about Hugh. He gives so much in every one of his performances. And a few special moments that I love sharing, because they're all amazing moments for me, is when, and especially when we were in the bar and he actually comes back up to the bar, and he says, "Because it all brought me back to you," and he looks up at me. Honest to God, every single time I had a tear in my eye, because for me, it's just like, from growing up being a kid to, 8 years old, seeing Hugh Jackman in film, and then him being my inspiration to become an actor, and then literally being on set with him. And then those words coming out of his mouth, even though I know it was like just part of the movie and like the script, those words coming out of his mouth, and him sitting on that bar, and like him, because he was like, he was emotional as well. So to see him looking up at me and saying, "Because it all brought me back to you," and then like he's also a little bit teary, and then I'm looking down at him, and like obviously I'm emotional too, and then I start to cry. It's honestly, it's one of the most beautiful moments that I think in the movie and on set that I get to share with Hugh.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether he felt it too, but for me personally, it was just a beautiful moment that I got to share with Hugh. And yeah, and that's what that film is to me. As much as it's a beautiful film for everyone in the world, and it's super inspirational and it has a fantastic message, for me, it's literally just like I look back at all these memories that I made with all these amazing people, and like, my role model and true inspiration. So yeah, it was an amazing film and an amazing year in my life.
Well, I mean, of course, he's an absolute legend, but another one of the biggest heartthrobs, everyone loves him, of course, Zac Efron. I mean,
yeah.
what was he like on set? Did you have a lot of time to spend with him? I mean, what was he like as a person?
So I didn't get to spend too much time with Zac, because most of my scenes were kind of between Hugh and myself. So I got a couple moments with Zac. There was one moment where he was like kind of putting my uniform on, or he was tidying up my uniform, because Hugh had, gone off to run the Jenny Lynn performance. And so that was kind of a nice little moment that we shared. I wasn't too emotional. But a funny story that I like to share that me and Zac had happen was in the direct moment after The Other Side, when you see him, like the scene opens up to the rest of the oddities, and he gets kind of pushed around a bit, right? And I step up with my sword, and I pull my sword out to kind of try and show that I'm there or whatever. on one of the takes, and I'm kind of hoping that they kept it as a blooper because that would be cool to see. But on one of the takes, he gets pushed a little too far over to me, and his hand goes flying back, and he backhands me across the face, and it hurt. It really, really hurt. I couldn't stay in character. So I got backhanded, and all you see, I don't know if you saw it in the tape, but all you see from me is just go like that, ow! And like, so I'm just like side taking and like touching my face because it really hurt. And then I think our director saw it because he called cut.
Did he apologize?
And he did mention it because he goes, cut, let's rerun the scene. And Zac, let's try not to hit Sam in the face this time. And so like, oh, cool. And then after like we fully got the scene like all wrapped up and the scene was perfect, he comes over to me and it was so funny. It was so sweet. He goes, I am so sorry. And he picks me up and he kind of gives me a hug, and it was really, really cool, and it was a funny moment. And yeah, that was kind of our funny little moment that we got to personally share together on set. So yeah.
I mean, apart from obviously in the film, there's so many emotional moments, and the acting is incredible. But another part of the film that I think is incredible is the music. I mean, every single song on that soundtrack is exceptional. So, I mean, do you listen to the music yourself when you're at home? Because it is incredible. I mean, every single song from The Greatest Show, From Now On, Never Enough, This Is Me, it's all about empowerment. It's all about accepting people for who they are. And that's what I think. The message that's actually in every single song is so relevant to where we are now in the world. So what are your thoughts on the music?
So yeah, the music, I mean, like you said, I think the overall theme is like self-empowerment. And I think that's what's really cool is that each one of them have like their own sort of anthem for what they represent to each person. And obviously This Is Me is like our overall anthem for the whole movie, and that's the song that won a Golden Globe and was nominated for an Oscar as well. Unfortunately, we didn't win, but you know, that's all right. But for me personally, I have my own personal anthem is actually A Million Dreams. Because, and I've said this a million times. Just a little bit of a pun. So because for me, growing up from where I grew up in this really small town in New Zealand, where it's not necessarily expected, and not to say that no one will achieve anything coming from a small town like that, but it's not really expected that someone from a small town like that would, you know, achieve such success. And so for me, A Million Dreams was like my anthem to say, like, I had a million dreams growing up, and I wanted to, you know, I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to act beside Hugh. I wanted to walk the red carpet. You know, and my own personal goals, like, you know, I want to have a family and all that, and dealing with everything that I dealt with and everything that I was going through. All of these dreams just seemed so impossible because I had so many challenges to overcome. And I think that's the overall theme with The Greatest Showman, and for me personally with the music as well, that it's self-empowerment. And that's what coming from The Greatest Showman and coming from what I've been through, is what I want to share with the world. And that is my message: self-empowerment and diversity. Like, we're all unique, we're all rare. And so like we shouldn't be trying to fit in. And that's what I tried to do when I was younger. I wanted to fit in, but now I don't want to fit in. I want to stand out. And that's what I try to do every single day.
And do you know what I love even more with this film is because we were talking earlier about all these different kinds of people. You get some of your masculine men, the emotional men, but I know so many people that always say, oh, I hate musicals, I can't stand it. And before the film came out, I'm not watching that. The moment they watch it, everybody falls in love with the film because it's different. It does. I can't compare it to anything else because it's got everything that you would want and more. Do you think that's kind of the reason for its success? Because it is one of the biggest films of all time. I mean, you know, it's a fact when you look at the sales and the box office results. So do you think that's why it's so popular, because there's nothing quite like it?
Yeah, I mean, it's fast become like, I mean, when it came out, like it was, you know, such an explosive hit. I mean, not initially, like it had been in cinemas for quite a while, and like the growth factor, you know, it took a while for it to catch on. And I think with that, because as people started watching it, it really kind of resonated and it really touched something deep inside them. And I think as human beings, if a film can touch us on such a deep emotional level, then we're really going to connect and resonate with that. And that, honestly, that's what, you know, the film industry in Hollywood is all about. Is all about trying to connect with everyone. And I think The Greatest Showman did that so beautifully. Where, because we're all insecure about, you know, about ourselves. We're all, you know, we all think we're not enough. We all think that we can't achieve, you know, things. We all, on a very deep level, like human beings, we're very insecure, emotional, you know, creatures. So, like when you have a movie like The Greatest Showman that really touches something so deep inside you, on so many different levels, it really just connects with you. And so, no matter what, like you just are drawn to it, and you just can't help but feel connected to it on some level. So yeah.
It's funny because when I really wanted you on the show for a really long time, and before, you know, I'd messaged your management before, but I actually messaged you myself on Instagram
Oh, did
to get
you?
you on, but I removed the message because just 2 days
Oh.
before, when I was drunk, I had uploaded a video of me dancing to The Greatest Showman, and I thought he's not going to come on the show if he sees this. So I actually removed the message to you purely so you didn't go on my profile and see. I had the costume on as well. I bought the costume, the hat, and I was spinning around, and I was just praying that you didn't go onto my profile and see it, because I knew this interview probably wouldn't happen. So yeah.
Is it still up there?
It is still on there. It is.
Oh my god, I want to see that. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Honestly, I'm so happy that you're on, because I do follow you, and I you know, I'm not just saying because you're on the show. You're one of the most inspirational actors, just because of everything that you stand for, the fact that you give so much back. You know, you've got, your career has just taken off since the film, but you still take that time to help other people, and I think that's extraordinary. And we spoke about your brand a little bit earlier in the interview, but is there any other projects that you're working on that you can tell us about?
Yeah. So recently I actually just got attached to two major animation feature projects. So one of them's called Ranger Raccoon, and so I will be the voiceover lead, and I'm actually also a producer on that one. And then another one is called Killer Bowl, where I will also be the VO lead actor as well, and I will be voicing a character named TK Wayne. And so both of these animated feature projects are in collaboration with Gary K. Wolf and Kevin Altieri. So I am super, super humbled and, you know, honored to be working with these absolute amazing legends. Kevin Altieri, I mean, if you don't know the Batman animated series, a legend. And Gary K. Wolf, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I mean, that was, Who Framed Roger Rabbit was like, I mean, it was so far ahead of its time when it came out. And so I can't wait to, you know, work with all these amazing people, and hopefully you guys, you know, like my voiceover work.
I'm sure we will, definitely.
Yeah.
Where can people find more information? You know, you were talking about your own brand, so where can they find information about this? Do you have a website, or is it through your social media at the moment?
So right now, you can find me on my social media. So you can find me on Instagram, which is at the Sam Humphrey, or you can find me on Facebook, which is just Sam Humphrey. I have Twitter, but I don't really use it, so don't bother trying to find me on Twitter. But I will be launching. So when my brand launches, and so that everyone also kind of knows what my brand is. My brand is called The Little Guy, and my slogan is standing up for the little guys. It's a self-empowerment brand. It's also a youth diversity brand. So basically, I'm trying to show everyone that we need more cultural diversity, and that, you know, everyone is rare and unique, and that's what makes us special. Also, I'm trying to create a brand and a lifestyle that helps to self-empower people to achieve, you know, whatever goals or ambitions or dreams that they have, no matter how big or small or impossible they seem. And then also you'll be able to get my autobiography hopefully next year when that comes out, but you'll all hear more about everything I'm doing through my social media.
That's amazing. And honestly, thank you so much for coming on the show. You probably established that I'm genuinely chuffed that you're on. It's a special moment. So thank you so much for
coming. Now I can't wait to see your drunk video.
Do you think there could be a second Greatest Showman? I know you probably ask us all the time, but do you think it could be a second film?
Well, obviously, I can never really comment too much on whether or not there is or isn't a second film. But as far as I know, that there are sort of rumors in the works about a script or a treatment that is possibly coming together for a second film. So we will just all have to wait and see, won't we?
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Sam, honestly, thank you so much for being so generous with your time and coming on the show. And hopefully when your autobiography's back, we can get you back on the show and get that
totally
talked about. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, and thank you so much for having me. And I definitely look forward to watching your video.
Thank you.